Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the Digital Distillery. It's OneUpWeb's monthly webinar featuring trends, news, and other hot topics happening within digital marketing. Today we're going to be talking about a particularly exciting topic within the industry, CRM retargeting. We'll get to more of that in a moment, but I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Dan Truel, account planner here at OneUpWeb, and today I'm joined by our senior paid media team lead, Kelly Yauk.
Hi, welcome.
All right, so as I said, we're going to be talking about a up-and-coming capability within the industry, something that's getting a lot of attention. Many of you are probably already familiar with this, CRM retargeting. And this is something that I think is universal to a lot of you, both in B2C and B2B. So we're looking at something that's specific today, improving customer frequency, something that is, as I mentioned, universal. Is that correct, Kelly?
Absolutely. Everybody wants to re-engage their customers and speak with them more frequently, and CRM retargeting is an excellent way to do that.
Definitely. Excited to get into more detail here in a minute. Wanted to let everyone know up front, this is part of our monthly webinar series. We will be covering other topics like this in the months ahead. And this is a live webinar. It's designed to be short, to give you actionable takeaways and real insights that you can take with you in your day-to-day marketing activities. So at the conclusion of the webinar today, we're going to cover as many questions as we can. We did receive a number in advance that we'll take first, and then with any time remaining, we'll get to a number of questions submitted here in the webinar itself. So with that being said, I think we'll get started. Sound good?
Sounds good. All
right, so let's talk specifically about CRM retargeting. What exactly is it? It's been described as personalization at scale, and what do we mean by that? One of the ways that Kelly and we talked about this in advance of the webinar is really applying very complex data from your CRM database to create highly targeted, highly relevant advertising across the web for your audience. Is that right?
Absolutely, and I think people are pretty familiar with the idea of retargeting already, just what exists right now. But CRM retargeting differs a little bit. So we know that there is a wealth of information available about almost everybody out on the internet, and we kind of consider that big data. But there are ways that we can take the data that exists, that we have in our CRMs, that we know about our customers, and kind of onboard that into a program that matches with big data. And that's going to allow us to reach out to existing clients that are in your CRM and speak to them and show them ads wherever they're at on the internet. There are a variety of places where we can show these, whether it's through a search engine display network or through social media.
And this is a very sophisticated process, but I think looking at this diagram here, these 4 steps, it really boils it down in I think, a pretty compelling way. But what we're talking about is matching that data, like you said, by either email address or postal address. True?
Yeah, absolutely. You can have either of those 2 matching methods, and obviously depending on how you are historically most comfortable reaching your clients, that will kind of decide the best fit for you.
And I want to be clear too today, again, many people perhaps on the call are familiar with CRM retargeting. Some are actively running display campaigns, perhaps others not. But what we're talking about here is actually serving advertisements across the web to your existing customers. Or to prospects within your database, so known audiences here. There's a lot of forms of retargeting online today. Certainly this is just one of those components, but it is important to recognize that we're drawing on actual data from your database, from your CRM, in order to create these highly targeted, highly relevant ads. And I imagine in this environment, as in display in general, the ad creative and the copy is particularly important as we're focused on these very much segmented audiences.
Ad copy is always going to be important. We want it to be compelling, to tell the user what we would like them to be doing. It also has to be eye-catching. But in this case, CRM retargeting offers us such an amazing opportunity to speak specifically to a user regarding what's most important to them, whether or not we're referencing a past purchase, to kind of team that up with the best offer possible for them, or whether it's just knowing that they haven't opened any emails from you in the past 30 days and you want to speak to them about something that they haven't seen. The ad copy is going to be very important for addressing that, and will really leverage what's great about CRM retargeting.
And we're going to show a few examples of that kind of compelling, highly focused ad copy and creative here in a few slides, but wanted to talk a little bit more about just what that hyper-focused, hyper-targeting aspect of CRM retargeting really means in terms of managing campaigns day to day for clients who are interested in this, for advertisers, publishers alike. This is something that is managed in a way that's very similar to your more traditional quote-unquote display campaigns. We're looking at a CPM model, but it's also something that we can manage to very specific campaign performance goals too. Yes?
Yes, and that is one of the main differentiators, is that we can have a goal that we're managing to. Frequently, you're just looking at a volume target if you're doing any other type of display advertising. But we can really work towards a goal.
So in some ways, this is really combining the advantages of digital media, as we see here, with traditional advertising as well.
It certainly is, and it's so great. Right on the slide, you're seeing that it's highly relevant. You can take any information that you have in your CRM and combine that as your targeting. So whatever you know about your clients, you can use to retarget with.
Definitely. Now I want to get into a couple of day-to-day examples that people on the line here can really apply in their work going forward. And as we mentioned at the outset, CRM retargeting is something that is incredibly sophisticated. There is so much opportunity for B2C and B2B brands alike within this tactic, but we wanted to really focus today on a universal application. So we are going to be looking specifically at customer frequency. How can we apply CRM retargeting to improve customer frequency both for B2C and B2B brands? And so we wanted to walk through 3 scenarios in particular today that summarize how that could be used. Just a couple of hypotheticals here. So the first one, we talked about at the outset how CRM retargeting allows advertisers to match email addresses and postal addresses that are within their existing databases online to serve targeted ads to those particular audiences. How might we frame a display campaign using CRM retargeting that matches by email address? I'm going to throw out a situation and let's see what we can do with it. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, so we have a hypothetical B2C sporting goods retailer. Let's call it somethingsports.com. And they're interested in re-engaging inactive email subscribers. So they have a list that they're marketing to actively via email, but as we all know, while email marketing can be incredibly effective, there are also definite segments that fall off, and we want to bring those back into the funnel. How can we do that with CRM retargeting?
A great way we can do this is to take that list of email addresses and combine it with another specific fact that we know about our users and something that's timely and important to us as a company. So we know that these users have purchased soccer equipment from us before. We're starting to get towards soccer season, but they haven't opened any emails from us in 90 days. So we'll layer those 2 pieces of information together and start serving ads to those users, and ads that both reference soccer equipment, our site, and re-engage them.
And this is the case in which, again, that ad creative is going to become very important as we look to target that specific audience who has perhaps not engaged in the emails or opened the emails rather in the past 90 days, but has made a soccer-related purchase previously. How might we incorporate that into the creative and copy for this campaign?
Well, as you can see in our example, we aren't saying this person's name, something very specific, but we're showing them only things that we know they're interested in. So we're showing them a compelling offer of saving 15% on your next soccer purchase, referencing they've purchased from us before. We know that they're interested in soccer offers, and it's going to drive right to our Something Sports site.
I think it's a great point that you raised too. You said that we're not focused specifically on one individual. Although these are highly segmented audiences that are based on real data from within a brand's particular CRM or database, we're actually focused on segments, and we're not marketing to, hey, John Smith, for example, or Jane Doe. What are some of the important considerations in respecting consumer privacy and also making sure that we're not being what we might call overly aggressive in targeting these audiences?
Absolutely. The great thing to think about is that this is personalized, but it's not directed at a single individual. So it's going to be anonymous. All of the information that would be identifying about an individual user, as soon as it's matched, it's wiped away. That's not going to be rolled into this ad. You're just going to be using it to target that segment. And the great thing is, just like any other remarketing or retargeting option, we can put a cap on these and say, we're not going to show you these ads 50 times a day, which you need to do if you are working on a CPM model. You don't want to waste your money on a user that's not interested or that's feeling inundated or followed around. I think we've all experienced that, and that's avoidable.
That's important to point out, too. It's important not only from a cost perspective, but also a user experience perspective and respecting what the customer is looking for.
Certainly. You want to give them a chance to see it, maybe show your ads more than 2 times. But once they've seen it enough, you can put that cap wherever you'd like and say, that's too many times. We're not going to show them more ads.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, in this particular example, we talked about using CRM retargeting by matching via email addresses. So we talked at the outset, though, there are 2 options really available within CRM retargeting whereby we can match segments from your CRM database by email address, as in this case, or by postal address, something that is perhaps a little bit more compelling for a brand that is more active or more reliant on direct mail or even catalogs.
And we know that a lot of people are in that situation where they've been very, very active in direct mail or using catalogs, and they want to shift more towards a digital focus. This is a great way to tie your existing database and move them into the online sphere and let them know what you have to offer there.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. We talked in this scenario about a B2C company, this somethingsports.com, that is using CRM retargeting and email matching in particular to market to these audiences. But let's go ahead and look at a similar display campaign that could be leveraged by, say, a B2B brand that is dependent on direct mail and catalogs, for instance. So in this scenario, we have a national retailer who wants to increase customer frequency among those receiving its direct mail pieces. How might they leverage CRM retargeting using postal address matching?
The matching process is going to be very similar to what's been done with the emails, but we'll instead be matching with a postal address. The way this is going to differ is that we know that traditionally they're used to interacting with us via catalog or maybe through a direct mail purchase. And so now we're going to meet them in the online sphere and show them our brand digitally. We're going to mash up the fact that they haven't made a purchase with us. This can be great to replace, to make a full change into the digital sphere, or it could be a complement, a solid complement to your existing work directly.
And that's a great point, I think. Some of the brands that we work with here at OneUpWeb that are heavily involved with direct mail or are marketing through a catalog in particular, we know that they're facing diminished ROI, especially as the cost of printing and postage goes up. Those are costs that really aren't going to decrease in the near future anytime soon. And so this CRM retargeting based on postal address matching is a way that not only they can perhaps prepare in the long term to shift away from direct mail or catalogs completely, but even if that's not something that is realistic in the short term, even the midterm, it's something that we can be looking to complement with right now.
Certainly, and the nice thing is, again, whatever you have in your CRM, you can use to retarget with. So if there's an additional layer on top of we have the mailing list and they haven't made a purchase, we know what type of purchase they've made. That can be done with the postal address as well.
And I think this is a great example in which the ability to manage to specific performance goals, like you talked about earlier, is really important. Because here, a case in which, say, a B2B retailer or wholesaler or catalog company is going to layer this CRM retargeting campaign on top of existing print or direct mail marketing, that's obviously an added expense. But in doing so, we would expect to see a much higher ROI in the long term.
Certainly, you're talking to a much more targeted audience. They already know who you are. They're familiar with your brand, and they're not seeing something where you're going after that really anybody out there on the web. You're talking to the right people.
And this is an opportunity, too, I think, to really address those audiences that perhaps continue to receive direct mail pieces or continue to receive the catalog, but perhaps are now just instinctively setting it aside or throwing it away or recycling it or whatever they might do with it. This is an opportunity to get in front of that same audience in a different and fresh way, effectively reintroducing a brand.
Absolutely. You're going to know if your users are taking a look at the digital ads. And because we're able to be responsive towards a set goal, if they aren't, then they're going to stop seeing our ads.
Definitely. To that same point, I think there are some really interesting opportunities within social media where we can actually layer in CRM retargeting as well, and that gets back to that idea of a more holistic marketing strategy. So we're touching the consumer, we're hitting those touch points at various points throughout the sales cycle, and across different platforms and even potentially different devices as well. We didn't touch on it earlier, but it's important to note, I think, too, that CRM retargeting and the display campaigns associated with it are definitely something that are compatible with mobile. We know that things are moving in that direction, and this is something that we can certainly touch on there. But social media is definitely a hot opportunity for CRM retargeting today, correct?
It is, and this is pretty exciting because it's not always been the case that we could do a matching type of campaign where we're showing somebody the same type of ad and a very similar content creative through the same campaign, both in a display network and socially. It's a big step in a new direction for us, and I think it's going to be very compelling to the users that see it.
So, for instance, in the past, relatively recent past, what we've been able to do in, say, Facebook or Twitter has largely been confined to targeted, and in some cases very targeted, demographic or geographic, occupational targeting in LinkedIn, for instance, but we haven't had that opportunity to pair it with real, actual customer data or prospect data from a database that we're working with to hit, a current audience that we're actively engaged with already to increase customer frequency in this example.
The best case scenario right now when we target in any social media network is to say people who are following or who have liked our brand, and hope that those people are engaged and are at a point in the process that we like. CRM retargeting is going to let us match up what we know. We know if they've made a purchase with us recently. We know if they haven't made a purchase with us recently. They don't have to have liked you or be following you, your brand, for us to speak to your specific users. And that is this whole different dimension of targeting that's not available otherwise.
And so there are a number of new, some as new as just the last several weeks, integrations with social media where CRM retargeting can really be layered into the mix there for much more highly targeted, much more relevant advertising to your current customer or prospect audience. So let's talk about some of those. Twitter has rolled out new tailored audiences in which we can leverage this. Facebook Exchange, that network is an opportunity for CRM retargeting as well. In this example, let's look at Twitter, and let's talk about, for instance, a national retailer that perhaps, and in reference back to that last example, they're seeing a diminished ROI on their direct mail or their email marketing campaigns, and they want to increase customer frequency. They want to bring people back into the funnel. How can they hit that audience in Twitter using CRM retargeting?
So we're going to do the same thing where we take our client data and onboard it, and then it's going to be combined with what we can do in Twitter. So rather than just saying, I want to follow anybody that is interested in my type of retail or hits this demographic that I believe is my user, I'm going to say, go after my users and reach them with a specific promoted tweet campaign. And it's going to let us use that mailing list. We're going to only speak to them if they've been with us, haven't purchased in the last 90 days or 180 days. And it's going to give them an on-Twitter experience.
And here again,
differentiator.
Definitely. And here again, we're going to see a higher CPM, and that's associated with that much more sophisticated technology, with that much more highly targeted, just that ability to target in a more focused manner. But we're also going to see that higher ROI because, like you say, we're not just speaking to these more generalized interests or these more generalized focuses.
Certainly. What the payoff in terms of the increased CPM, you're going to see come back in terms of the increased conversion rate.
So what is for those on the call who maybe aren't familiar with running ads in Twitter or on other social media channels, can you talk a little bit about how this might work in practice, say within Twitter?
Certainly. So when you set up your promoted tweet, you have pretty broad and general options right now. You can go by very specific geo area, or you can go by a general interest, and you can try to combine what you think, and then show this promoted tweet. And you can see highlighted here, circled here, that this is a different type of promotion. This is where you're mashing back to that CRM group that you've identified that you want to talk to. It's going to look pretty close to what you're doing otherwise, but now you know who you're talking to. You know exactly who you're talking to and only showing them what you want them to see.
And we have a number of different options within channels like Twitter. Each network is different, but in Twitter, for example, there's not only the timeline, but there's also search. There's promoted accounts as well as promoted tweets. We have a number of different ad formats that we can use in applying CRM retargeting.
Absolutely. So you could take that if you just wanted to grow your followers on Twitter. This would be a wonderful way to do it. You're going to look at people who are not following you already, combine that with your CRM group, and say, people aren't fans of us. We want to speak to them on Twitter. If they're active on Twitter, let's put these two together. We'll reach them this way. And start engaging with that customer more frequently.
And that audience's current knowledge of the brand will likely, though not always, but likely translate into a higher conversion rate as well in the case of a follower campaign.
Certainly. They know your name.
All right. Well, really interesting stuff here, and I think that there are so many opportunities. We can't emphasize enough how sophisticated CRM retargeting is, and so nuanced. There are so many opportunities to apply it across the board, both for B2C and B2B brands alike. I hope that's been communicated here on this call. We do want to get to a few questions before we wrap things up, and we do have a number of questions that came in advance, so we'll get to those as well here. But I wanted to start with one that came in that I think is pretty important. We touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but how exactly is CRM retargeting different from quote-unquote traditional retargeting?
What we're doing with traditional retargeting, and what I think most people think of as traditional, is we're taking a particular landing page on your site or any page on your site and saying, users that have been to this page, I want to retarget. Now we can do a combination, get a little fancy, and say people that have hit this page but not this page, I want to reach out to. The CRM retargeting gives us so many more options because it can speak to all of the information that you've been accruing and all of your experiences with your customers. And so anything that you're tracking, you're aware of in your CRM, you can talk to. It gives a much more multi-layered approach, and it lets you speak to your users, only the users that you want to talk to.
And that's a great point. I also think that, as you say, there are other opportunities for different forms of retargeting that are still going to be a good fit, regardless of whether or not your brand is engaged in CRM retargeting as well. They're complementary, and as with anything in digital marketing, it's important to keep the objectives first and foremost. So what are you trying to accomplish? Depending on what the answer to that question is, you may want to be engaged in CRM retargeting. You may want to be engaged in more traditional, retargeting on site. You may want to be doing a combination of both, or more than that.
It all depends on what your end goal is.
And we definitely have an opportunity too, going back to the conversation we had earlier, to manage to different performance goals for different campaigns within that broader realm of retargeting in general.
Certainly. The CRM is going to be the one that lets you go to that specific end goal.
And speaking of that CRM data that allows us to target in such a refined way with CRM retargeting, here's a question from someone. They say that their CRM isn't well organized. Can they still do CRM retargeting? Is that still an option for them?
Absolutely. You're going to put it in through a CSV file, load it that way. Whatever information you have is what you'll have to target with. So even if it's fairly disorganized, you're still going to be able to use that to very easily make a CRM group.
I think it's a great point because there are a number of clients that we work with here at OneUpWeb, a number of other brands that we're all familiar with. Everyone is in a state of flux in terms of organizing things. Organizing data, big data, of course, is a very hot buzzword and something that a lot of different brands, if not all, are grappling with today. And how is data organized? What information should we be collecting? More importantly, what information on customers should we be collecting that's valuable and actionable? That's a great point you just mentioned. You can use whatever you have available, but you don't need everything to do something.
Certainly. I think people hear big data and just have no idea how to apply it to them. It's in the news and it sounds great, and think that it sounds a little bit complicated to apply to your situation, but it's absolutely not. There are ways that you can get on the cutting edge of what's available and apply it to you and make it make sense for your business, make money for your business.
How often does the data onboarding process happen, and how often can segments be updated within CRM retargeting?
As frequently as you like. You can update it as often as best fits you. We would recommend maybe twice a month. That would certainly give you an opportunity to change anything. Maybe they have started to open emails and somebody's going to move into a different group for you. Twice a month is a good timeline.
And those can be those can be provided and uploaded in something as simple as a CSV format, just as you said. Another question based on these customer segments, how many can be targeted in a particular campaign? You mentioned that we can really apply any of the data available that's organized within a database, but is there a limit to how many segments can be applied?
There's really not a limit. It's only a limit to what makes sense for you. So the more targeted we get, the higher your CPM will be. And also, the whole point of this is to be at scale. So if you're narrowing your search down to a handful of people, this might not be the best way to reach them. But you could layer on multiple different ways to match people. And as long as you've got a nice big group to work with, you should be fine. Good point.
We're running out of time here, and I know that there's a couple other questions that we weren't able to get to today that we will be following up with those people on. And for clients that are on the call today, I would also encourage you to contact your account manager, of course, or Kelly and I will be following up with you individually as well. But just to close things out, any closing takeaways on CRM retargeting, Kelly? I know you've had a lot of experience in paid media. This is definitely an emerging channel. There's definitely a lot of industry buzz around it, but I think rightly so. This is not, just a flash in the pan, so to speak.
Certainly not. This is really the next step in digital marketing in my mind. The reason that I've always enjoyed working in paid media is because you get such a wealth of data and information, and we know that leads to clients having a wealth of data and information about their users. This is really the next step where we're taking those two sets of information together. You can take everything you have and use it to be advertising in smart ways on the web.
Exciting stuff. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who's on the call today. Please feel free to connect with either Kelly or myself with any questions that you may have. Otherwise, follow up with your account manager as well, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Digital Distillery webinar. Take care.